Welcome to the show, Dana. Today, we're diving into the solution for modern burnout, how to achieve impact without increasing hours. We'll start by exploring your unique framework, then move into the high stakes challenges of scaling quality coaching, and finally discuss the future of sustainable leadership. Dana, you've worked with high pressure teams at Uber and Twitter. Please tell us what made you get started in this?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really, one of the things that moved me to move into coaching was the fact that I worked with so many amazing, talented people. And they, much like myself, were loving parts of their job, but not necessarily the process of what would happen in the job. So we were all overtaxed. We were working too many hours. We were working in circumstances that ended up being a little more frustrating than they needed to be. And so, as I started learning more and more about coaching and some of the skills that that could bring, I realized that this really could be a great complement to what's happening in a lot of these fast paced environments to really get the best out of the people. I think both the teams and the company want more from less. People want to spend less hours and teams want more impact. And so those two goals are not mutually exclusive. And so, how do we start to figure out how to bring those in a way that's actually sustainable?
That's amazing. Uh, I really found that very insightful. Let's talk about your core philosophy. Can you walk us through the career control framework, which is clarity, effectiveness, relationships, and also please explain why you believe all three members, all three pillars must be addressed simultaneously to combat burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I first got into coaching, we really learned that so much of what we're looking for is coming from the client. So when you're looking to people, it's like they are the experts, they know the information. But what
Hmm.
happened was again and again, as I was coaching people, I realized that there were sort of three buckets of information that people not only wanted to improve, but maybe they were missing pieces of. And so the first one that we mentioned is that clarity piece. So if we don't have sort of what I call steadier foundations to work from, then the rest of the pieces are just going to be unstable. So that really means knowing that we're working on the right things, both for ourselves and for our organization. But also, that sort of includes things like, do we have the right mindset? Do we have the right physical health that we're able to sustain it?
Hmm.
The second piece that we talk about in the framework is really kind of what we talk about what some people see as productivity. So what it really comes down to is smarter systems. So we do have too many things to be focusing on. So once we have that clarity piece, how do we figure out the way to be the most effective with our time, both individually and with our team?
Hmm.
And so that really is a process of making sure that we know some of the best practices that are happening out there, but also we're adapting those to what's really happening on the ground. And of course, we don't do this alone. We do work with other people. And so those relationships that we have, both our coworkers, our clients, our family, all of those relationships are so important in our success. And if we don't have stronger relationships there and really focusing on them, whether that's leadership or whether that's stakeholders, we're really not going to be as successful as we would be. So really it is having that full picture. We've got our steadier foundations, we've got our smarter systems, and we've got our stronger relationships. Those are really the pieces together that are going to influence each other to being the most successful.
Wow, that's a very powerful model. Then focusing on clarity, what matters and why is the
Yeah.
foundation. What is the single biggest operational bottleneck or unintentional system you see leaders create that sabotages their clarity and forces them into a reactive, busy state?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that part of that is we want to slow down to speed up. So it's really taking that time doing annual, planning and strategy, but also checking in on a regular basis. And I think what happens in so many teams is there's a disconnect between what leadership says is important and what's actually happening on the ground. And so that conversation needs to happen on both ends. So, why am I spending so much time on these things? Why are these the projects that are coming up again and again? So either we need to do some education as to, okay, here's what's really happening in those circumstances. So how do we account for that in our bigger strategy picture? Or it is that understanding that, hey, what's happening down here actually isn't the most important thing that we're working on. So we have to make some tough calls as to why we're not going to be putting resources against things that are coming up and again, and what the implication of that. And
Hmm.
so really marrying those two pieces together is something that we need to make sure that we're spending some time up front to make sure that we are dealing with reality. And then, as much as we can kind of predict that maybe things will not be exactly as we know, it's continuing that process to make sure it's iterative. And we're talking about why this hypothetical abstract of what we talked about doing isn't happening. So, what is the reality of that? What is the reality of things that are happening? And so, if we're being reactive all the time, okay, how do we get our systems smarter? Or how do we decide that there are certain things that we are or are not going to address?
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you. There are lots of times where, like, people that I have in my team, they struggle to see the bigger picture from what I've seen, from what I've mentioned to them. So I have to reiterate the bigger picture as to like the strategic vision, what we're trying to achieve, and that helps them. So when I first found out that they would struggle to see the big picture, I'm saying big picture multiple times, but I realized that it was a problem with my communication rather than
Mhm.
just being frustrated at them for not just doing the work.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that you're calling out communication is so key to the success of organizations. And I might be getting this stat slightly off, but the statistics are something like 75% of communication is some sort of missed communication. It
Wow.
doesn't mean entirely, it might be a nuance, but the reality that the majority of conversations we're having, there's something that's getting missed. And
Hmm.
so acknowledging that, yeah, how do we do what we can to enhance both sides of that. So we want to be better communicators. We want to figure out what that takes. We also want to be better listeners so that we're asking questions and we're following up and we're not seeing everything through our own lens. We're
Hmm.
really understanding what the other person is trying to communicate. It's huge.
It is. It really is. Dana, you mentioned that you help leaders reduce meeting overload. What is the real quantifiable cost to an organization when its leadership team is constantly in meetings and lacks the time for strategic, high impact work?
Yeah.
Are we talking about missed revenue opportunities or simply high leadership turnover?
Yeah, we're talking about everything.
Hmm.
Meetings are the number one complaint that I hear from people because really the two biggest reasons are I'm in meetings and so I'm not getting my work done. So I
Hmm.
don't have time to do the things that I really think are the most important and that we've talked about are the most important. And then the second part to that is I don't think the meetings that I'm in are effective. And so it really is looking at, okay, what are we trying to accomplish in meetings? Because meetings actually can be wonderful tools. If we need to be together to have a conversation, to brainstorm, to quickly come to some sort of information that we're not going to get to asynchronously. Nobody also wants to be on these email threads that are going back and forth for days and days with reply all after reply all. So there are times when it makes sense for us to get in a room together. And so the first is making sure that we're picking the right things that we need to be in meetings for. And then how are we setting this meeting up effectively? Is there a clear agenda? I know it seems so basic, but do we know what the outcome of this meeting is intended to be? How have
Hmm.
I decided who the right players are to be in this meeting? Who just needs to be informed and maybe doesn't need to be a part of the conversation? And then as we're going through this, where are we getting derailed in these conversations that we don't need to be talking about with this group so that we're really continuing to prioritize? I mean, there's so many jokes about, putting a pin in that or putting it in the parking lot or all of those things. But truthfully, we really want to be intentional with how we're spending our time. And so not just having a meeting on the schedule for meeting's sake, but really deciding, okay, when is it the most effective to have a meeting? And how do I make my meeting as successful as possible?
Yeah. And I love the tips that you've said as well on how to make the meetings so successful. I don't know if this is an Amazon thing, but I remember reading somewhere that well, I think Jeff Bezos said
Yeah.
if you have more than two pizzas for the number of attendees in a
Yeah.
meeting, that's too many people and it's a
Yeah.
wasted meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard because we think of these things as there's some jokes about, when you first started a company, you're upset that you're not in the meetings. And then as you get more senior, you're upset that you are in all of these meetings. And yet people feel like they want to be a part of the conversations. And so I do think it's, whoever's ever setting up the meeting, who's ever doing this, there is some strategic thinking about, okay, who is the decision maker in this conversation? Who is the person who really needs to do this? Do they need to be a part of the conversation? Who are
Hmm.
the people with the information that we need in order to make this decision? And again, maybe there's some duplication on a team. And so one person can be a representative. And
Hmm.
who's executing this? Who needs to be involved in those decisions so that we're figuring those out? And again, some of these people can just be informed after the fact. So making sure that we've got the right representatives. And part of that is making sure that the agenda is clear. And so that we're all knowing what information we want to bring to the table to have those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about your Dana on demand model? What is that?
Oh, I would love to talk about data on demand. So at the beginning of this year, well, this last year, I talked to a lot of people who are people that I work with, former colleagues, as well as clients, and talked to them really about the challenges that they were facing today and the reasons why some of the solutions that were out there didn't feel like the right fit for them. And what I heard again and again is that people were struggling. They were struggling, and but one of the things that they're struggling the most with is that they just don't have the time. And so when we talk about getting solutions, coaching is one of the things that in the long run will save you time. And yet they didn't feel like they wanted to be able to dedicate, an hour to be on a Zoom call to talk about things. They had
Hmm.
issues that were coming up on a regular basis that they really wanted help with. And so what I decided was rather than doing a traditional one-on-one coaching or a traditional membership where, everybody had to show up at the same time on a Zoom to talk about issues, what I wanted to do was I wanted to provide asynchronous support. So you get a 10-minute audio drop where I do coaching and education on a certain topic that either I know is impacting everyone or somebody has specifically asked me about. And so I know everybody would benefit from the answer. I do those biweekly so that you can listen to them when you're on your walk, when you're on your commute, wherever you are. And it's under 10 minutes. So it's easy peasy to go through and listen to. The other critical piece to the membership is you can email me at any time or leave me a voice note with any question or anything that's coming up. That means we can do these really incremental check ins about things. We don't have to wait until there's a big topic that we talk about every 2 weeks. We can really be a source where it's like you have a sounding board. You have somebody who can come up with suggestions. You can have somebody who points you in the right direction along the way without it taking more time out of your day. And so that has been a model that I think has been really people are starting to turn to AI is the other solution. And yet AI is not giving you how does this really work in my life?
Hmm.
AI is giving you generic, often positive information about how to respond to something. And so, as a complement to the information, we are not at a shortage for information, but as a complement to that information, what I really do is help people figure out how is this going to work for you? Where are you getting stuck? How could we move forward in a way that's going to be sustainable? And so that is the model for the membership of Dana on Demand.
Wow. And that model is brilliant for scalability. It, you noted the challenge of balancing customer support with scaling. Could you
Yes.
please elaborate on the biggest internal operational bottleneck you face when
Yeah.
trying to manage the volume of client communication and still deliver that high touch customer's attention?
Yeah, it's so important. I think as a coach, what we really all realize is that we are the product. We
Hmm.
are the service. And so while I absolutely love to spend, time on a Zoom with somebody, really having that one-on-one customized support. And again, there is nothing that will replace that for that level and of depth and movement. I also do a lot of facilitation and training where I'm on site with an organization and I'm there for maybe an afternoon or a day or two. And it's wonderful to be able to be with all of those faces and do that. There is a limitation to the number of hours that I have in my day, as
Yeah.
well as to other people. And so, what I really realized is not only do I want to be available to more people, I want to be available to people who might not otherwise have access to the level of support that I can give in those other models.
Mm.
And so, whether that's a bandwidth thing, whether that's a cost thing, we're able to really coordinate in a way that's scalable. So I know, I've got my session, my time blocks that I go through and do that, my time blocks when I'm recording that content. And it's something that can go out to many more people than would otherwise be sustainable within my.
Yeah. Oh, just going back a few steps, like you mentioned
Yeah.
that clients are using AI but often aren't getting the information that makes a difference. Like there's a missing gap. What is the underlying reason that you believe AI currently falls short in providing the right information for complex leadership and
Yeah. Yeah.
not relational, sorry, relationship challenges?
Yeah. I think AI is an amazing tool. I think that, again, if you have a question that's a little bit more nuanced than what you might normally plug into a search engine, AI can do that. AI can
Hmm.
respond with information. It can also customize to a degree based on what you're asking. I
Hmm.
think there are two areas where it really falls short. So one is it's going out in the world and it's gathering information. But it's not really able to customize that to you to the degree that a human can,
Yeah.
where you can really kind of see, okay, this is exactly the nuance of that information that I think is going to be the most helpful for you in this circumstance. The other piece that it's lacking is AI is, in this instance, client led. So if
Hmm.
you're the person who's asking the questions or doing those things, you're leading AI down a specified path. You might ask it to
Hmm.
brainstorm or come back with more information, but you're really customizing where that information is going.
I
When you're
see.
working with a coach, I'm going to ask you more questions. I'm going to notice some patterns. I'm going to see what's really happening in this circumstance. And so I'm going to be able to help you not only get the right information to reply, but start to challenge some of the assumptions that you're making, some of the mindset shifts that you might need to be open to. And so a
Hmm.
human at this point is able to do that where AI really just can't. It's a little
Yes.
bit still of an echo chamber.
Yes, there's a lot of emotional intelligence that AI still does not have.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. And so I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. Again, there's not a shortage of information. There's a shortage of how it's going to work for me.
I
And
see.
so that is something that, again, we're continuing to work on. A lot of times, the leaders that I work with, what they've done to date has been really successful for them.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it's not necessarily going to be successful to get them to where they want to go. And that shift is a piece that a lot of times it takes some unpacking to figure out kind of really what's going on and what is going to be required to get us to that next level.
That is amazing. What is the biggest challenge or opportunity that you're focused on for the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think part of it really is that scalability. So, how do I get myself into the most places that I want to go? I think one of the things that I'm really focused on is, again, some of the work that I do with teams has been really customized. And again, what I'm noticing is the same thing that I really notice with my one-on-one coaching is there's a few themes that teams are dealing with again and again. So communication, like we talked about, I led a workshop recently where we were talking about good communication and everybody was giving me the right answers. So
Hmm.
everybody knew what good communication took. And yet, why wasn't it happening? That's
Hmm.
the area that we really want to start moving into.
Yeah.
So there are a few of those themes that are coming up again and again that I want to make sure that I'm providing the support and resources that are really going to make the difference.
Looking ahead, Dana, you mentioned the industry is evolving towards more success in less time.
Yep.
What is the one thing that has to go right for Dana Zellers to hit its biggest goals in 2026? And what would achieving that goal mean for the evolution of the data on demand model?
Yeah. I think for me, it goes back to the framework. This
Hmm.
is really why it is the foundation of so much of the work that I do with my clients. It is about taking that time to get clarity, having the right strategy, having the right focus of the things that I'm working on. It is about having the right systems. I, as many of my peers, spend a lot of time not only working in my business, but on my business. So I
Hmm.
spend time coaching, but I also spend time doing business development, working on my systems, things like that. I really want to be able to reduce the amount of time that I'm working on things that are not client touching.
Yeah.
And so that's going to help me to be more and more successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with Dana on Demand, the key there, as I'm going to be doing that, is really focusing on what am I hearing again and again from my clients so that as it evolves, I'm really meeting the needs of what's happening. Our
That's
world continues to evolve, as do the needs of our people. And so, if there's support that I can do, if there's an AI model that I can provide them that's going to be effective and a great complement, that's something that I want to continue to look into.
amazing. That is amazing, Dana. Thank you. What are your top 2 or 3 strategic goals for your practice over the next 6 to 12 months? And how do you envision achieving these goals?
Yeah. So it's a great time of year to be talking about goals and the focus that we are working on. Again, I think that what my biggest goal is to for the first 6 months of the year is to again create sort of those workshops, those scalable pieces for teams that are going to be
Yeah.
the most effective and are going to lead people along the path of the biggest gaps that I'm seeing. While I'm doing that, I do want to continue to scale data on demand and coaching. I want to continue to bring in new members and add new support for those.
Mm-hmm.
The third area of focus for me is really my speaking.
I
So,
see.
one of the things that is so fun for me to do is to get in front of big groups and to talk to them about some of the foundational levels that I work with in my business. So, if I can offer one tip that somebody can take from that that's really going to make a difference, as well as get to know me and know more about my business, that's a huge success for me.
That is amazing to hear. Again, Jana, what's something that we need to talk about, but we haven't talked about yet?
What a great question. I think the thing that most of us don't talk about, that you and I can take a moment here to remind people about, is again this idea, which you sort of brought up earlier in our conversation about how teams are so reactive.
Mm-hmm.
I think that again, we are so caught up in our day to day of our urgent responses and our urgent requests that we really have to force ourselves a little bit to take that step back, to slow down and think about what do I need right now? I don't have to do this all on my own. Maybe I need support. And I'm not saying it's coaching, but coaching is an amazing support tool. But where in my life are the things that maybe I don't need to be doing that somebody else can help me with? What are the
Mm-hmm.
pieces that somebody else has insight or knowledge that I don't have that can help me to that next level? When I look at the things that I'm doing day to day in my life, are they making a difference? Are they making me happy? And are they getting me to where I want to go? And if the answer to that is no, how do we start making some changes, even when we feel like we don't have time?
Dana, thank you so much for your time today. It was incredibly insightful to learn about the career control framework, the critical challenge of scaling quality coaching, the need to move from busy to intentional systems, and just actually meeting you and speaking to you because you're such a wonderful, like, insightful person. It's incredibly enlightening to learn from you. I can't wait to see the heights that you reach next year. Well, this year, 2026. And I'd love to catch up sometime in the future and discuss more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I loved having our conversation and talking more and more about this area that obviously I'm so passionate about.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. What did you think?
That was super fun. No, I loved your questions and your follow-ups. So I really appreciate it. It really did feel like just a great conversation.
Great. That's the biggest aim for these podcasts. They're just conversations because it's not scripted. And a lot of the times, if someone tells me something really complicated, goes way over my head. Um, that's happened a few times. I've just edited that bit out.
Yeah, yeah. As somebody who's sort of leading the conversation, it's great to have experts on. But yes, sometimes, we just got to let
Yeah.
people have their space.
Yes, absolutely. If someone does tell me something really complex, after the podcast, I go to ChatGPT and I ask them to explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah. Yeah, ChatGPT is great for that.
Yes.
Having all of those things. Yeah. I always balance because I used to do a lot of contracting and consulting. So I'd go into new environments and people would be saying things that I was like, I'm actually not sure. Like, I'm not even sure if this is a question I should ask because I'm not sure what they're saying. And so I'd
Mm,
always have my little list of notes. And I was like, okay, these are the things that I'm going to look into. And then if I have to
mhm.
have a follow up question, I will.
Awesome. Well, Dana, this was really amazing. I really loved talking with you.
Great.
Um,
Thank you so
if
much.
yeah, I wish you all the best for 2026. If you ever need any help with scaling or like AI automations to help save time,
Wonderful.
feel free to reach out at any point.
Absolutely. No, I would love to. And, let me know when this is posted. And I'm so delighted to share it out.
Yes, absolutely. I just had to tell you like a bit more homework. So I've got a few podcasts that I've already recorded that are in like the editing phase.
Totally
So
makes
this
sense.
will probably go into the editing phase like a bit later. And once that's done, I'll send you an email. You'll have like a week to have a look. Anything you don't want can remove. And then we'll post it usually on a Friday or a Thursday night. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Perfect. It
Awesome.
was great
All
talking
right.
to you.
So great talking to you. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you. So, me too. Have a good
All
day.
right.
Bye.
Take care. You too.